Hey, good late morning and a blessed Memorial Day to you. I'm sitting out here on our patio. Obviously, I'm dressed up in my work in the yard get up. Carol and I have been out in the garden getting it ready for planting, and it's been a beautiful day, and it's going to get even better. It's going to be nice and hot today, the way I like it. It's about time we got some nice weather. So anyway, I just wanted to ponder a little bit the idea of freedom on this Memorial Day. And so Memorial Day is different from Veterans Day. A lot of times we confuse that. Veterans Day is the day we recognize all veterans. Memorial Day is the day that we remember those men and women who have given their lives in service to the country. So we rightly remember them this day, who have given that sacrifice. And so it's important that we stop and remember that this day in the midst of the cookouts or whatever it is that we're planning to do. Um, but I want to talk about the notion of freedom, and I think it's apropos. I'm going to talk in general terms, but think it's apropos because we're currently in the midst of a time when we're talking about rights and freedoms and responsibilities and how to balance all those things out. So I want to give a little bit of a thought and really want to turn it in a decidedly Christian uh, context. So we have tended to define freedom as the ability to do whatever we want. So on this weekend, and sometimes Fourth of July weekends, you'll news reporters will go out to the beach or somewhere and they'll talk to somebody. What does this weekend mean to you? What does this holiday mean to you? And they'll talk about freedom. And I'm able to have a cookout and I'm able to go to the beach. We have tended to define freedom as being able to do what we want. But I want to jump now from this day of Memorial Day into a decidedly Christian context to talk about freedom uh, from a Christian perspective. And the place we need to go in the New Testament is Galatians, Paul's letter to the Galatians. Freedom is the theme. We are free in Christ. We've been freed because of Jesus. What's real interesting is that for Paul, freedom is never um, the ability to do what we want. Freedom in Christ for Paul is the responsibility to do what we ought. So for Paul, actually, the ability or the desire to do what we want isn't freedom. It's actually slavery. It's slavery to our own whims and desires. C.S. Lewis picks this up in some of his writings, where he will talk about that the world's understanding of freedom as being able to do whatever we want really just makes us slaves. It makes us slaves to our bodily desires and our biology. Whereas freedom in Christ, in Jesus, the Spirit frees us to do what we want. So it's very interesting in Galatians where Paul will mention the lusts of the flesh, and he'll talk about all the things that human beings desire to do most, that are out of keeping with the character of God. But then he gets to the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, long suffering, self control. Against such things there is no law. And he will say, you've been freed in Christ. Paul says to the Galatians, you've been freed in Christ, but do not let your freedom become an excuse for doing what you want, but instead love one another. And so freedom for the Christian is the responsibility to do what we want. The Spirit has freed us and made it possible to go against sometimes those desires uh, that alienate us from God and to really truly be transformed. So, just some thoughts on this weekend. That as a Christian, what it means for me to be free in Christ is not to ask what's in it for me, what's it about in reference to me, what do I get out of it, but what is it that I am responsible for? What does Jesus expect for me to do in loving God with all my heart? I can't do that on my own. I need the Spirit. That's what Christ frees us for. In the Spirit, life in the Spirit frees me to love God with my heart, mind, soul, and strength, to love God with everything I have, and also to be willing to sacrifice and be able to sacrifice to love my neighbor as myself. So, just some thoughts on freedom and the New Testament and Galatians. For Paul, freedom is not the ability to do what we want. Rather, freedom in Christ is the responsibility to do what we ought. So, what ought we to do today in loving God and loving neighbor? I hope you have a great Memorial Day, and hope that in some way you can find a way in Christ to love neighbor, to do what we ought for His glory. I hope you all have a great day, and see you soon.